Hello there. This is a recorded version of the presentation given at the AULRE 2021 conference. I'm calling it Synoptic Vision. Exploration of the definition and scope of RE and worldviews over the last 5 years has been very informative, but it's mostly been done in relative isolation from related attention in other curriculum areas. This, I think, is a category mistake, given the synoptic character of both religion and ethics, extending as they do into art, English, geography, history, science, BSHE, SMSC, and even maths. Expressed in traditional curriculum terms, I'm identifying 10 research topics in RE that I consider to be invaluable for everyone's benefit, children and young people, teachers and parents. They're under 3 headings: provision, horizon stretching, and a center point. Its perspective is somewhat autobiographical. Provision. This is the first cluster, and it has special priority for me because it relates to a deliberate shift I made between the 1970s and 1980s in how I should use such research energies as I had on top of teaching and admin commitments. Lots of colleges of education providers were closing. RE was nationally in peril from reductions in quantity and quality of provision and supporting resources. I could no longer justify a focus on my PhD interests. Instead, it needed to be on data gathering and analysis relating to RE provision, rationale argument, staffing, time allocation, exam options, thus playing a full part in efforts from within the RE Council to promote RE with government agencies and with the full range of faith communities, including humanists. Hence the emphasis of my publications in the decades ahead. It also led to my later determination to develop internet-based resource supports, REXS, Filter, Why Be Good, moralcapital.info, and most recently, armisticenow.net. My fear is that we're now undergoing a repeat threat, and the capacity for resurgence is diminishing as full-time academic and professional strength is being significantly dismantled, an unwitting result of government education policy with regard to the school curriculum, teacher education, university and local authority funding. Here are my 5 on vision. 1, the nature and extent of specialist staffing in RE throughout HE and ITE provider. Given the expectation for RE as variously identified by reports and reviews, agreed syllabuses and denominational documentation, it's reasonable to suppose that university lecturers and others involved in the provision will be qualified specialists in the subject. With specific reference to RE, what are their relevant qualifications? Their allocated teaching and research time, their hierarchical responsibility, and their formal employment status. 2, provision made in university ITE programs for interdisciplinary engagement. During my 8 years of responsibility for PGCE RE at Goldsmiths, we introduced a requirement that student subject specialists in every subject should in turn give an exposition of the distinctive educational worth of their subject to students from all other subjects. It was much appreciated. What opportunities and obligations are there for university ITE tutors to engage in interdisciplinary activity, and what are their attitudes towards the value of such? 3. The nature and extent of 16 to 19 non-exam RE provision. The leaving age from public education is now 19. Only half of 16 to 19-year-olds are in schools, academies and sixth form colleges. The rest are in FE. Research is needed both to document the lack in RE and ME provision and to develop a strategy for its redevelopment. 4. Head teacher education relating to all aspects of RE. Given that head teachers, principals, carry the can for all aspects of RE provision, whatever the category of school, academy or college, what attention was given to their understanding of RE in the procedure for their own appointment and in any subsequent management education and training they've had? 5. Respective understandings of RE on the part of successive prime ministers, secretaries of state, ministers and special advisors. Inner workings of governments on most aspects of their operation are vital, but difficult to gain access to except through candid diaries and autobiographies. Personal experience, however, tells me that persistent digging would be revealing. I'm thinking of Tony Blair in relation to the initiative to develop the non-statutory national framework for RE. I'm thinking also of Michael Gove's decision on appointment as Secretary of State to terminate the well-grounded and collaborative RE-based resilience project. What's to be learned? And now my next 4 suggestions, which I'm calling horizon stretching. My own PhD research was on religion in the developing world of children and young people. In 1970-71, it was principally an opportunity for me to engage with boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 16 from 2 different parts of the country in equal numbers and of each age. Initially, over 1,000 completed the same hour-long written exercise. I then individually interviewed a subset of these for an hour each, same questions and activities across the ages, selected according to their respective backgrounds. 82 Church of England, 81 no attachment, 38 Free Church, 40 Roman Catholic, 41 Jewish, 38 Sikh and 17 Muslim. Empathically, it stretched my understanding of those backgrounds, of any age-related sequencing in children's thinking and feeling, and the correlation of religious language with artistic, moral, physical, political, and scientific usage. It anchored me then and since, and it's reflected in the next 4 suggestions. 6. Revisiting of longitudinal study of any developmental sequencing involved in pupils' understandings. Comparative investigation of cross-curricular understanding of key concepts would be revealing. For instance, thunder and lightning from science, homeland from geography, MP from PSHE, prayer from RE. These are all terms I explored in my own individual interviews. Even more revealing and important would be monitoring the development of symbolic sense in religious language, verbal, visual, and ritual, in relation with artistic expression, painting, music, and dance. 7. Insights from psychology on sense of ought and consciencing. Although there rightly be uncertainty over the term conscience, that doesn't justify inattention to it, along with the development of moral sense and moral agency, nor its constriction to the solely utilitarian. Research which combines attention to relevant insights from the social sciences with the curriculum development initiative would be invaluable as a research priority. Recent research evidence of children as young as 18 months behaving with a sense of fairness deserves extrapolation. 8. Interface of religious education with moral education. Beware misleading barbs. RE must avoid instrumentalist justifications. Religions are multidimensional. Ethics are just one very variable aspect. Ethics are autonomous, and linking with religion is a distraction. ME's what's needed in schools, not RE. Therefore, in discussions about name change and subject definition for RE, I do think that further philosophical clarification is needed. This would be restorative of attention to the importance of ME in this context, and at the same time appreciative of the condition of mutual interrogation which properly exists between the respective autonomies of religion and of ethics. Both are intrinsic aspects of the conjoint human experience of believing and valuing. 9. Interfaith theologies of education, including the non-theistic. In my own earliest research, one of the questions I asked boys and girls to consider was whether all religions are equally true or equally false, and how we might be able to tell. It's now even more obvious that our national context is one of competing claims to truth. Our public institutions acknowledge that. Monarch and church have both affirmed that their roles are to serve and not control, in a context which they acknowledge as secular and multi-faith, as well as Christian. The national RE tradition has always recognized a degree of religious plurality. Why else talk about agreed syllabuses? Remarkably, the 2004 non-statutory national framework for RE was a signed declaration on those parties that the once dual system of partnership of church and state in public education had become a plural system, a partnership of faith communities and state. Research to help take this forward would examine the respective theologies of education of each of the faith traditions, not theistic and non-theistic, represented nationally, along with the rationale for their approach to and engagement in interfaith dialogue. An understanding of these different views is invaluable for RE teachers in answering classroom questions regarding competing claims to truth, even booing. Now, finally, centre point, provision and horizon stretching combined. 10. School assemblies and collective worship. This last suggestion is one which I'm myself pursuing. In recent years, evidence of social disparity and division has been mounting. Wealth gap, Brexit, attitudes towards refugees and trafficking, overseas aid, prison conditions, social media. Nearly 10 years ago now, I'd been overjoyed by the Olympic Games opening ceremony. Now, amidst COVID, I was moved by the weekly clapping for the NHS, a collective ritual. It reawakened my view that in a Durkheimian sense, school assemblings are a form of religious ritual, even without the legal terminology of collective worship, CW. More specifically, I realized how much I am regretting that a truth evident in 1944, that there's a whole school dimension to RE, is being overlooked at a time of comparable threat, global pandemic and cosmic climate crisis. Then RE was given exceptional status and defined as the teaching part, RI, and the assembling part, CW. Now, the notion of CW's integral part in RE is largely ignored, except in schools and academies with a religious foundation. Especially in secondary settings, its provision is patchy and perfunctory. Ofsted has given up on it. Major reports on RE bracket it. And the Humanists UK sponsored bill to abolish it has recently had its first reading in the House of Lords. What a wasted opportunity. Primary legislation is actually permissive, wholly or mainly broadly Christian. Sacres may do their best to help, but there's never been any nationally funded curriculum research and development to open up the scope of what could and should be done in all schools and academies in an educationally appropriate way. Of course, worship of the kind held within faith communities in celebration of their particular beliefs is inappropriate. For many young people, such coincidence is missing. Collective worship is not that. Rather, it has to do with shared, open exploration, affirmation, and celebration of what matters, what's of most worth in the collective hearts and minds of teachers, pupils, and the nation at large. Having talked this through with lead officers of the REC, NASACA, and the Interfaith Network, I've resolved to work in a grounded way. I've started with a look at some key terms whose interpretations can get in the way of sensible thinking on this front. Nationalism, faith, religion, humanism, and worship. I've done a timeline and literature survey. I've identified 4 shaping ingredients for CW, now understood as depth charging and big windowing. These are 1, special moments. These are common in individual and family life, that of communities and nations, and in religious traditions. Hellos and goodbyes, gratitude and thankfulness, regret and sorrowing, wonder and wowing, hoping and seeking. 2, belonging and boundaries, building and extending a sense of relational context and future roles in living. 3, subject celebration, opportunity to appreciate and ponder on all the realms of meaning and knowing across the whole curriculum. 4, living faith streams, celebratory attention to their presence in a UK which is Christian, secular, and multi-faith. Shaped by all these ingredients, I've outlined an annual calendrical sequence on the basis of 3 terms of 12 weeks and twice weekly instead of the legal daily. The novelty of this is that it's affirmative of Christian breadth rather than narrowness. It gives public acknowledgement of religious diversity as characteristic of the UK, and it also opens up worship as on a par with regular human giving worth to. It lends itself to encourage personal starting points on every participant's part. And it still remains open for denominational schools to provide supplementary interpretations. It likes worldviews and big ideas as promotional devices and has similar motivation. It takes seriously particular constitutional givens, and it raises the profile of RE and its claim on staffing resources. As a test of practicability and a resource for further refinement, my next step is to take this forward with a local sacre, working with a small group of teachers and schools. All this is set out on the project website, communityclapping.net. Any comments? Very welcome. Ooh.